Right, shalom, shalom. This is Brother Azimawath once again with another quick lesson. First and foremost, going to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahawah, Bahashem, Yahawashah, Bahashem, Rakakwadash. And that's all praise to the Heavenly Father in His Son's name, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ. Real name in the Hebrew is Yahawashah. All right, and also giving praise, honor, and glory unto the Holy Spirit as well, which is the force that allows this edification to go to come forth. And today, I would just like to touch into or go into this one word, which is consideration. Let's go here real quick. Consideration, or consider, more so consider, right? Because as as we draw closer into the final hours of Esau, Edom's, the so-called white man's rule, right, and we come closer into embarking into the kingdom of heaven, which is comprised of the so-called Black, Hispanic, and Native Americans. The Lord has given humanity, specifically the nation of Israel, a time to consider, right? A time to consider His judgments, a time to consider His mercy, a time to consider His people, a time to consider His word, right, and His laws, such as commandments and wisdom. So, with Him giving us this time to consider, Him giving us that, I guess you could say, Him giving us the facets of the mind to consider, that's a gift in and of itself, right? Because the masses of the people, they're not actually stopping to think, about what's about to happen. They're not stopping to think, about the judgments of the Lord. And this is what's going to leave them dazed and confused when the Lord hits them with that final haymaker, but with us who's in this arena of truth, the Lord has given us this mechanism inside of our mind. He's wired us in such a way, He's wired our spirits in such a way to where we can stop and reflect and think about and consider His mercy and His judgments, and doing so, another thing that consideration does, it also gives you understanding, right? Because it's one thing about, knowing scriptures, knowing what the scriptures say, quoting them or whatnot, but it's another thing to actually understand what it's saying and apply wisdom, that comes from it. And that's only done by the feat of considering, considering. It can be, basically, I guess you could say similar, with you stopping to meditate, when you meditating upon your bed, as you considering the works of the Lord. All right, so let's get into this definition, and then we can get a couple of precepts. All right. So it says here, consider, late 14th century, it says to fix the mind upon for careful examination. And that's what, these videos, these edifying videos go out for, also the brothers out the street corners. We basically provoke, one another to consider and to carefully examine, the works of the Lord, right? He says, it says to meditate upon, to view attentively, scrutinize. And when you scrutinize something, it's just not a glance over it. You're not just, just looking at it and then you take your eyes off of it. No, when you scrutinize something, you look on it with precision. You squint your eyes, you focus in, you hone in on that vision. It says not to be negligent of, right? So, you're not casting it away, you're actually holding it closely. He says, reflect on, consider, and study, right? 3 key words right there: reflect, consider, and study. All right. As we get some scriptures today, this should bring this lesson, or especially this word, full circle. Especially for a lot of us that's new in this truth, myself included. As we're continuing to learn these scriptures and to learn the works of Yahawah Bashem Shah, we have to just sit back. If you watch, a couple of videos, or you read a couple of chapters in the Bible, okay, don't continue to just like over bombard yourself. Just stop back. Just sit back, stop, and consider, what you just read, what you just studied, and that's how understanding, comes into play, right? Because then you're gonna, once you cultivate, that habit of considering, and you then you'll have that understanding, and then you know how to properly execute, you know, that understanding, which will be that execution of understanding will be none other than what you will call wisdom, right? Because that's why scriptures differentiate those three key aspects, if you will, in life is wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, right? Wisdom is knowing how to apply the knowledge, right, and the understanding, and the knowledge is just you know, right, you know about something, but understanding is you know the intents behind it, you know the rules and the requirements of it, right? And once again, understanding is when you know how to properly execute and act upon it, right? So let's get a couple of scriptures real quick to go to show that it's wise to consider, right? This is coming from the Lord himself, Yahawah. This is Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 29. He says, "Oh, that they were wise, that they understood this, and that they would consider their latter end." See that? See? And that's one reason why our people fell out of rulership, because we were not wise, right? And we did not consider our latter end, right? And this is another reason why Esau, Edom, the so-called white man, you know, is about to fall out of rulership as well, because they're not wise. They're not considering their latter end. Now, we already know it's, you know, the Most High's movie, and he's already basically, you know, told us, you know, who's going to be the next runner-up. He already, you know, prescribed that, you know, but nonetheless, the Lord, you know, he coins it to be a wise thing for you to consider your latter end. All right, so let's grab this real quick in the book of Haggai, chapter 1. Before we get that, all right, let's go back to the importance of getting this understanding. So this is Proverbs chapter 4 and verse 7. He says, wisdom is the principal thing. The principal simply means the main thing. So wisdom is the main thing, you know, that we should be desiring for, because when you read Wisdom Solomon chapter 6 and 20, he says that wisdom basically bringeth thee to a kingdom. If you're the light being thrones and scepters, you know, the Lord will basically promote you. You know, he says wisdom is the principal thing, therefore get wisdom, and with all thy getting, see that? So it's differentiated between wisdom and understanding, right? With all thy getting understanding, see? All right, so once again, understanding is you have understanding of the knowledge, right? You have understanding of that information at hand, right? And wisdom is you properly executing upon it, right? He says, oh, here it goes, right here, verse 8. He says, exalt her, right? Exalt who? Wisdom, and she shall promote thee. That's, you know, when we exalt wisdom, the Lord will promote us back into, you know, our kingship. He says, she shall bring thee to honor when thou dost embrace her. Now, when will that be accomplished? When we sit back and consider, how do I get wisdom? You know, how do I get wisdom? Well, let's grab this real quick. This is Wisdom Solomon chapter 8, verse 21. Says, nevertheless, when I perceived that I could not otherwise obtain her, right? What is that? What's another word for perceived? Let's go. Let's just get that real quick. Perceived. Spelling it right. Okay, perceive. It says become aware, gain knowledge of, you know, recognize, understand. And how is that feat accomplished? By you stopping and considering, right? When you consider something, that's when you're aware of it, right? So let's read that again. Wisdom Solomon 8 and 21. Nevertheless, when I perceived, right? So when I considered, right, that I could not otherwise obtain her, except God gave her me, and that was a point of wisdom also to know whose gift she was. Yeah, it's also wisdom to know, you know, whose gift, you know, or who gives out wisdom, right? Because the world doesn't know that. You know, the world thinks that you can obtain wisdom by going to, you know, Harvard University, or, you know, some of these, you know, these dark colleges, man. You know, they just leads you further in derision, right? They believe that you can, you know, grab wisdom by that, but no, true wisdom is knowing first and foremost the fear of the Lord, right, and then knowing who wisdom comes from, right? He says, I prayed unto the Lord and besought him, and with my whole heart I said. All right, so yeah, let's go back. Let's go back here to the book of Haggai. Haggai chapter 1, verse 4. I'll start at verse 2. It says, thus speaketh Yahawah a host, meaning the Lord of heaven's army, saying, this people saying, the time is not come, the time that Yahawah's house should be built. So back then, you know, during the time of, you know, Ezra and Nehemiah, Ezra, you know, during the time when we were building the house of the Lord, our people were saying, this isn't the time when the Lord's house should be built. But what did the Lord say? Then came the word of Yahawah by Haggai the prophet, saying, it is time for you, O you that dwell in your sealed houses, and this house lie waste. Sealed houses, let's just go into that word, sealed, wainscoted, covered with boards and paneling, right? So basically, us who were just living in, you know, mean cottages, right? He says, now therefore, thus saith Yahawah hosts, consider your ways, right? So this is a commandment from the Lord, right? Before we start building this house of the Lord, right, we have to consider our ways. Consider your ways, man, right? Because this is how we'll get that understanding, and eventually that will cause us to execute, you know, true justice, and to know how to implement wisdom, right? Because when you read the book of Proverbs, I want to say, let's see here, it says that wisdom buildeth her house. Let's see here. Let's see here. Yeah, here it goes. Proverbs 9:1. Come on. It says, wisdom hath builded her house. She hath hewn out her 7 pillars. Right? So this is why the Lord tells us before that house was to have been built, right, to consider our ways, right? Because when you consider something, that's like Wisdom Solomon said, that's how you know that that in and of itself is wisdom, when you stop back and consider, right? Going all the way back to the law in Deuteronomy chapter 32, when the Lord says, oh, that they were wise, that they would consider their latter end. So let's go back to Haggai 1. It says, you have sown much and bring in little, ye eat, and ye have not enough. Ye drink, but ye are not filled with drink. And that's our people, man. We're not considering why these things are happening to us. We're not considering, you know, while we continue to go out there, you know, and sow, while we continue to go out there, you know, and go to these dead end jobs, but, you know, we're bringing in little, right? If our people would have been considered this, you know, our foreparents, if they would have been considered this, you know, we wouldn't be in this predicament that we're in now, you know. But once again, we already know that all these things, you know, ties back to the will of the Lord, right? But at the end of the day, you know, he's commanded us to stop back, or to stop and to consider what's going on. He says, you clothe you, but you are not warm, and he that earneth wages, so like it, and he that earneth wages to put it in a bag with holes. And that's our people, man. All right. When you get that paycheck, just like as soon as you get it, it's escaped from you, man. Right. And we got to, well, now since we've considered, you know, the ones that's in this truth, we know why this is happening. All right. Those curses, Deuteronomy chapter 28. All right. Verse 7, he says, thus saith Yahawah hosts, consider your ways. All right. So once again, the Lord is telling us to consider our ways. All right, so let's grab this real quick. The book of 2 Corinthians 3. I'm gonna grab it in the NLT version. And it says this. He says, so all of us who have had that veil removed can see and reflect, see that, and reflect the glory of the Lord. And who's the one who removed that veil? It's Yahawashi. And he removed the veil off of his bride, you know, because, you know, if you consider, you know, a marriage ceremony, you know, who's usually the one to lift that veil is not the bride, right? It's the bridegroom, that removes that veil. So Yahawashi has moved that veil. He moved the scales off of his bride's eyes so we can see, right? And so we can do what? Reflect on the glory of the Lord, because for the longest, his church did not do that. His woman did not reflect on his glory, man, right? And that reflect is a consideration. I mean, that's a synonym for consider. Let's get that again. Consider. It says to do what? Reflect on, consider, to study. See that? These things, these three things are synonymous, one and the same, man. They're harmonious. They work together, right? So when you study the scriptures, you know, that's you considering, that's you reflecting on the works of Yahawah, Yahawashi, right? And that's a commandment as we have gotten. Let's read that again, 2 Corinthians 3:18 NLT. So all of us who have had that veil removed, right, can see and reflect the glory of the Lord. And the Lord, who is the Spirit, makes us more and more like him as we are changed into his glorious image. And all that is done by us is simply reflecting, man. All right, reflecting on, you know, the previous, you know, lessons that you've heard, reflecting on the previous study sessions that you studied, you know, reflecting upon the previous, you know, life scenarios or the experiences that the Lord has thrown your way. You know, he doesn't give us these things to, you know, for us to just, you know, listen to it and then it just escapes us. No, that's why he tells you to hold fast to what you have, right? To hold fast for what? So you can hold fast to it and look at it and observe it and reflect it, man. Right? You don't want these things, these parables of understanding to escape thee, you know? So let's grab this real quick. So let's read that again. This is 2 Corinthians 3:18. So all of us who have had that veil removed can see and reflect the glory of the Lord. And the Lord, who is the Spirit, makes us more and more like him as we are changed into his image. So the key point is us getting that veil removed so we can see and reflect on his ways. This is Ecclesiastes 7:16, 7:13. He says, consider, see that? Consider the work of the Lord, of Yahawah, right? For who can make that straight which he have made crooked, right? And if our people, you know, could have had this etched in our minds, right? We wouldn't be trying to fight so hard for the so-called white man in salvation, right? Because you trying to fight for this man's salvation is you by default not considering the work of the Lord. He obviously made this man crooked, you know. He obviously made this man crooked, so who are you to try to make that straight, right? So the reason why people don't know, you know, the things or the works of Yahawah, Yahawashi is simply because they haven't considered it, man. All right, and once again, this thing goes all the way back to consideration. Let's grab this Wisdom Solomon 8:17. Yeah, it says, now when I consider, see that? Now when I considered these things in myself and pondered them in my heart, meaning I pondered them in my mind, how that to be allied unto wisdom is immortality. Yeah, let's read that again. Now when I considered these things in myself and pondered them in my mind, how that to be allied mean to be a friend. So like it mean to be a friend of, right? How to be allied unto wisdom is immortality. All right, and that was done by Solomon, you know, asking the Most High, you know, for that wisdom, right? Because he stopped, you know, and reflected upon what's going to please the Most High, what's going to please my heavenly Father, right? And then the Lord gave him that wisdom, you know. But it all started with Solomon contemplating, him considering his ways, right? Him considering, you know, the people before himself. That's why he asked the Most High, you know, teach me or show me how to judge this so great a people, you know? And this is the type of mentality that a true king will possess, is consideration. You considering your ways, right? So let's grab this Wisdom Solomon 6:15. He says this, to think, therefore, see that? You thinking is doing what? You considering. To think therefore upon her is perfection of wisdom. So to reflect, right, to consider, right, these things, that's a perfection of wisdom. It says, and whoso watcheth for her shall quickly be without care. See that? Let's grab this real quick in Philippians 4:8. It says, finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, right, and whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue and if there be any praise, think on these things. See that? He says, think on these things, meaning consider these things, reflect on these things, right? See, the scriptures didn't, isn't, the Lord isn't repeating himself, for no reason, man. From the beginning of the book all the way down to the end of it, it's got think, it's got reflect, it's got consider, all there for a reason. Why? Because in his law, he says, oh, that they were wise and they would consider their last end. All right. So if it'll behoove you, to consider your ways, and that may, lead the Lord to provoke him to leave a blessing behind. That blessing in form of mercy. When he wages war with the inhabitants of this world here soon, man. So he's only going to have mercy upon those who stops and who reflects and think upon their ways. As a matter of fact, let me grab that real quick. I believe that's what is that? Sirach. Man, let me turn my Bible real quick. It's a lot. Wow, since I went there. Is it Sirach? So, okay, I'll just keyword it. Yep, Sirach 18 and 20. Let's get that. Sirach 18 and 20. And it says this. He says, before judgment, examine thyself, and in the day of visitation, you shall find mercy. Hey, man, that's exactly what the Spirit just, made me say, right? If you reflect upon your ways, before the Lord comes down upon planet Earth, particularly Babylon the Great, in such a fierce and cruel manner, if you reflect upon your ways, man, hey, the Lord's going to give you mercy, but the reason why you don't see the masses of the people, the reason why you see the masses of the people continue to live life like it's a party, they're going about their regular everyday affairs with no second thought, is because the Lord didn't give them that spirit of consideration, man. See, it's a spirit that comes along with consideration, right? And that spirit comes from none other than Yahawah, YAHAWASHI. Why? Because that spirit of consideration is, according to Wisdom of Solomon 8, is wisdom, right? And we know that wisdom dwells next to the throne of the Most High, man. So we're in a privileged position, for those who's truly about this thing and that's considering their ways, man. All right, so let's read that again. He says, before judgment, examine thyself, right? How do you examine yourself, right? You do a deep inner search. You reflect upon, the things that you're digesting spiritually, mentally, right? Emotionally, right? You're reflecting upon yourself. You're examining yourself, right? He says, in the day of visitation, right? That's the second coming. That's when Yahawashi comes. He says, in the day of visitation, you shall find mercy. So this is why it's important, for this lesson to go out, man, right? Because we're definitely in those days of visitation. But when that day of visitation comes, the only thing that's going to separate those who have mercy and who that don't are those who examine themselves, those who do what? Consider. Consider what the hell is going on, man, right? So let's get this real quick. The book of Psalms. Psalms 119 and 15. I'm gonna grab it in the NLT. And this is one of the Lord's elect men speaking, David. He says, I will study your commandments. See that? And what's another synonym for consider? Look right here. It says study. He says, I will study your commandments and reflect on your ways. Right? David, he wrote in plenty of his Psalms, man, where he would just, lay up in his bed at night, and reflect upon the Lord's doings, towards himself, towards the way of men, towards the sons of men, towards the heavens, towards the temple, right? Hey, man, this is a heavy thing, Consideration is a heavy, thing, man. But the Lord is going to put that spirit upon those who He's really trying to preserve, who He's destined to preserve, right? Because once again, before judgment, examine thyself, and then you shall find mercy. So let's skip down here to verse 55. It says this. He says, I reflect at night. See that? I reflect at night on who you are. Oh, Yahawah, therefore I obey your instructions. And I did a video on my other channel, and if you're not subscribed to it, I recommend you subscribe to it. It's called Psalms for Thought 144. Psalms for Thought 144, right? And that last video I did, we went into through the spirit, prophetically what the night is and what the morning is, right? And prophetically speaking, the night represents, Esau, Edom's rule and reign of terror, right? That's why he says weeping may endure for a night, but joy come in the morning. That morning would be considered Yahawashi, right? So when David says right here, Psalms 119:55, he says, I reflect at night on who you are. What? Well, who's ruling right now? The most wicked kingdom ever, man. This is why this is also known as a land of darkness in Job chapter 10. So this is a time especially for us to be reflecting, man. All right, at night during this captivity, right? Because this is the reason why we're in captivity, because our people never reflected during the day. See that? So let's read that again. He says, I reflect at night on who you are, O Yahawah, therefore I obey your instructions. All right. Let's skip down here. Well, let's go back up to verse 27. And he says this, he says, help me understand the meaning of your commandments. Why did David say that? Once again, Proverbs 4:7, he says, with all thy getting, get an understanding. And this is what made David so wise, because he asked the Lord to help him to understand. He didn't, he wasn't so, arrogant or boastful or prideful to the fact that, he just thought that he knew everything about everything because he was a king. No, he himself, being a king, knew that he needed help to understand. All right. So he says, help me understand. All right. And that should be our prayer, man. Lord, help me understand what it is that you want me to know, in order for me to receive the salvation and to dwell with you. So help me understand the meaning of your commandments. See that? The meaning of your commandment, because we know that these commandments, it's far extends to black and white. Thou shalt not, wear garments of, mixed fabrics. Okay, well, that's black and white. All right, cool. But obviously we know, according to Romans 7:14, that the law is spiritual. So the law has a duality to it, if you will. All right, so this is why it's important for us to, not just read and see these things, but to understand it. As a matter of fact, let me grab that real quick in Revelation chapter 1, verse 3. He says, blessed is he that readeth, and they that hear the words of this prophecy, and keep those things that are written therein, for the time is at hand. When you go into that word readeth, it says to distinguish between, to recognize, to know accurately, and to acknowledge. And so translated, to understand, man. So blessed is he that readeth and understandeth, man. See that? So he says, help me understand the meaning of your commandments, and I will meditate on your wonderful deeds. I will meditate on your wonderful deeds, man. All right. And this is why 2/3 of our people is finished, and the heathen nations are finished, because they just simply don't meditate upon the Lord's wonderful deeds. They don't understand that what's going on in the world, the Lord has done this. Why? Because the Lord didn't give them that spirit of meditation, the spirit of consideration. All right. So let's get one last precept, considering why Esau Edom's about to get such a harsh punishment. It's Isaiah 47, verse 7. And it says, and this is speaking about, we'll get verse 1 for context. So it says, lament for Babylon. We know that America is synonymous to Babylon. It says, come down, sit in the dust, O virgin daughter of Babylon, sit on the ground, there is no throne, O daughter of Chaldeans, for thou shalt no more be called tender and delicate. All right, so basically the Lord's removing this power seat, right, the seat of rulership away from the daughter of Babylon. Let's go to verse 7. He says, and thou hast said, I shall be a lady forever. All right. And that's what they say. You know, like when you read Psalms 49, it says it, they say in their hearts that their houses shall continue forever, you know, from one generation after the next. You know, that's what America thinks, that they're going to be around here forever, man. All right. He says, I shall be a lady forever, so that thou didst not lay these things to thy heart, neither did you remember the latter end of it. Right. And this is let's grab that again. Deuteronomy 32 and 29. That's why the Lord is going to judge this man so cruelly, because he's not considering the latter end of his judgments, man, of all the rape, rob, and murder that he has done, and the atrocities that he's done to mankind. Once again, Deuteronomy 32 and 29. Oh, that they were wise, and that they understood this, that they will consider their latter end. See that? So that's what this thing's about, man, is considering, you know, your latter end, considering the works of the Lord, right? Considering your works, so in the day of visitation you'll find mercy. And all of this is synonymous with you being wise, you know. So with that, I hope you was edified. And well, before I close out, let me show y'all my I'm gonna put my new channels in the description box, you know, for those of you who wants to stay up on top. Like I said, my other channel is Psalms for Thought 144, and my backup channel, because they gave me 2 strikes, and my other one is called Patience of the Saints, all caps. Patience of the Saints, all caps. So so yeah, that's pretty much it on my end. So with that, I hope you was edified. Until next time, Shalom and Mawaf Lababar.